Today is April 14th, 2021, and welcome to my garden. Friends and family, strangers, and most importantly myself. This is to document where the garden was at the beginning of this experiment and to record what our hopes and goals are, and just give us a reference point to look back at. The space is about 750 square feet that has been used, both portions of it as a garden, as a playground area for previous owners, children, and then most recently, prior to my purchase in August of 2020, it was just a dumping ground for yard debris, grass clippings, and had really just grown a whole bunch of weeds. So last year in the fall of 2020, knowing that I wanted to eventually turn this into a garden, we did a little bit of preparation by knocking down the weeds, picking up all the leaves throughout the property that fell from the trees, and using that kind of as a cover, a mulch per se, to hopefully reduce any additional weeds from growing, and hopefully as that material broke down would add some nutrients back to the soil. I have no idea what the condition of the soil is, and quite frankly, it doesn't really matter to me, because right now the goal is to just see what happens. It's an experiment. Let's take this ground with minimal preparation, a little bit of organization, and a plan, and see what we can come up with. Excuse me, I had to scratch my eyeball there. What we've done is prepared it a little bit by adding the boxes. They're not necessarily beds, they're just simple 1x material to create 5 individual beds that measure 8 foot by 10 foot in size. One of the goals also is we don't know if this is necessarily going to work. We don't know if this is something that we want to do going forward. So instead of investing a bunch of resources into this, it's a very minimal approach. And what I mean by that is all of this is removable. At the end of the year, I want to be able to pull these boxes out. If I need to, I can pull the stakes out and drop the netting and turn it into something else. Or and hopefully it does work out, and we'll be able to move those out of the way, rototill the entire area back up, and reset it for next year. So with that said, this year we're not doing any of the work to create seedlings for the plants. We're sowing them directly into the ground. They went in a couple of days ago, and we're just gonna see what happens with what we've got. As far as prep goes, as I mentioned, we stacked up all the leaves there over the winter. About a month ago in mid-March, I rototilled up the entire area. It took a better part of 4 hours to do this because of how compacted the ground was, but the end result was a very nice, airy soil that had everything turned into it for hopefully nutritional value. After that, because of the chickens, I wanted to give these plants the best fighting chance they could and prevent the birds from gaining access to them, at least during the infant stages of the plants growing. So we put up these 3-inch pressure treated posts around the perimeter. Those are 8 foot that are driven in about 1.5 foot into the ground. And then down the middle of it, there are 2 10-foot T-posts that give the roof the height that it needs to be able to walk underneath it without any obstruction for height clearance. In between them is just a stainless steel cable. It's a lightweight, I think it's a 1/16 cable that is more than sufficient to hold this very, very lightweight netting. On the roof, it is a bird netting. I don't remember exactly the sizing or the spacing of it, but then the side is what's referred to as a deer net. I think the only difference between that is the size of the openings. But that's all that was done to create and enclose the area. As I mentioned, the boxes are 8 foot by 10 foot. It's just a simple 1x material. Again, not knowing exactly how this is going to turn out, I didn't want to invest the money into raised boxes or pressure treated material, simply because one, the prices are outrageous right now in 2021 for lumber, but also again, don't know if this is something that we want to do long term. Once the boxes were in, however, I did bring in a bunch of wood shavings from a planer. So this isn't necessarily sawdust. It's actual shavings, so it's a little bit more substantial. It should hold up a little bit better, or at least a little longer. And the intent of that is to help minimize the chances of mud during rain or watering. And then also, if it does break down and add some nutritional value back to the soil over the course of the year, and at the end of the year when we till all of it back in, if it helps, great. If not, no big deal. Inside the boxes themselves, I did get 2 yards, so it added about 2 inches of garden soil. It's a 5-way blend from a local vendor supplier. I want to say it was topsoil, compost, sand, chicken manure, and maybe one other thing. I just can't remember what that is. Yeah, but that's all that was added to the soil. I have no idea what the pH balance is. And again, because I want to keep this a simple experiment, it doesn't really matter to me. I just want to put the seeds in the ground and let's see what happens. As far as future planting goes, we do have one of the previous tenants had built a compost box down here near the chicken coop. We have started to put, I guess, compost ingredients into it. It has already started to have the breakdown process. We turn it over about every 2 or 3 days. And have seen some progress with it. We're also adding chicken manure from the chickens to that in hopes that not necessarily going to be using that throughout the year or this season, but the plan is to use that at the end of the year, adding it to this mixture. That way we have plenty of time for the manure to break down, and so that it's not too hot for the plants themselves, and it'll add more nutrition to it. As far as tools, what I've done, I found a great application online. It's a website called growveg.com, Growveg. It has a planner that you can outline. Here's a copy of it. You can outline or draw up what your garden is, and then simply click and drag different vegetables in there, and it will tell you how many you can put in that space, what the spacing is between the items, what the spacing between the rows are. It gives you lots of information. It's been very beneficial to get us to this point as far as having an organized plan approach to it all. Beyond that, as far as ways to actually start to set these up, let's climb inside the net here. I wanted to, again, have a plan and a strategic approach to it all. So on the beds themselves, we took one of the extra boards and turned that into basically a large ruler. So one side, on the green side, these are lines marked out every 4 inches, and then on the flip side, on the black side, the black lines, it is every 6 inches. We took that and then lined it up to the beds themselves, or the boxes, I'm sorry, and made marks every 6 inches so that we could identify where exactly these rows needed to be, so that we were at least giving it a fair chance, giving it proper spacing. To go one step further, I added the string. And I know that that is a bit overkill, but I have a reason for it. And that is, I grew up in farming. I mean, the family had a farm that I visited on a regular basis. We had gardens at home. But that was 30 some years ago. I have absolutely no clue what a sprouting plant is going to look like. If I see a green thing coming up, is that a weed? Is it some other plant? Is it the plant that we planted? What is it? So to help us identify what is what and where, we added the lines so that we could plant along that line and know that everything in this line is the seeds that we planted, and those we want to keep. If material or other plants start coming up in between the rows, I didn't put seeds there. And so that's an easy way for us, myself, Andrea, and the kids, to identify, hey, that might not be something that we want growing. Let's go ahead and pull it out during our weeding process. To go one step further, each of the lines have dots on them as well. And that was, again, to help identify what is spacing. This is where the seeds went for this particular product. If things start growing up in between the marks, what is it? Is it a weed? Is it something that we should be cautious of or leave alone? Again, I understand and know that that's a bit extreme, but the intent of it is to help us identify and learn what all of these plants look like, how they grow, when they grow, and then also, most importantly, how to identify weeds so that we can pull them out and have a better crop. One of the other tools that I made was just to help the planting process. I was in one of the stores and saw something similar that they were selling for about $30, and I thought that that was absolutely ridiculous for a Buffy vampire, slain spike. So about 10 minutes worth of work on a table saw, and I made one up myself. It's basically just a square piece, kind of rounded off on the edges and then tapered down, and then measurements made from the tip up. You can't really see the 2 and the 1 anymore because it was used heavily during the planting of the seeds, but the idea is to very quickly and easily identify how deep the hole is being made, and you can adjust it accordingly for the seed that's being planted. So really came in handy. Again, I'm sure that, there's been plenty of years throughout the history of life that humans have been able to grow crops without this stuff, but I figured, you know what? If we're going to have a plan and a strategy, let's just stick to some consistency. Lastly, we've been in a couple of conversations about irrigation. A buddy of mine, a really good friend, has access to a lot of that type of material, whether it's drip, soakers, all that kind of stuff. And while that does sound fun and it does sound intriguing to go through that extra step, on a whim, I brought this sprinkler out here, placed it as close to dead center as I could, and lo and behold, it covers the entire area very well and consistently. So again, with the intent of keeping things simple and just see what we get out of this, I think I'm just going to go with this for now. So as far as a plan, we're putting seeds in the ground. We're making consistent rows and lines so that we can identify what is or what isn't seeds or plants, and then going from there. As far as trellises go, did a little bit of research on there, and again, to keep with the idea of being able to, how did you get in here? You're not supposed to be in here, Cedar. Anyway, to keep with the idea of being able to change this around and not having anything too permanent, and also from a time perspective, this is, I think they call it a cattle grate or cattle railing or something along those lines. It's basically a 4-gauge wire that is welded or soldered together in 8-inch intervals. That's 50 inches tall by 8 feet wide. $20 a pop. Went up real quick and simple and fast. They're galvanized, and so it's going to last a number of years and will give us a strong, substantial support for the vegetables that are going to grow up them. I have done a little bit more research in the last couple of days and may add some additional trellising to some of the other plants that we'll talk about here in a minute. But other than that, that's kind of the plan. And getting into, I guess, the layout of the crops themselves, we'll start with the first bed up here. On the left, it's going to be basically all of our onions. So we'll have in the first row Walla Walla onions and red onions. The second row from the left is going to be green onions and radishes, sparkler radishes. The green onions are a white Lisbon. The third row on the far end there is going to be Ruby Queen beets. And then the closer section of it, or half of it towards us here, is a white Spanish onion, I think, if I remember correctly. Something like that. Moving into the middle of the bed, the spike on the top is where our one plant of cabbage is. In the middle is Brussels sprouts, and then because zucchini just tends to grow and grow and grow and have an endless supply, I only went with one plant for that. According to all the information, that is proper spacing for all of it, so we should be good there. We'll see what happens. I do know that the Brussels sprouts and the cabbage really aren't expected to be harvestable until the end of fall, so it might be a waste of space at this point, but It was on the list of things we wanted to try. We added it to the list before we knew exactly how long things took, and we're just going to go with it. So the next row here is going to be broccoli. It's I'm not even sure how to pronounce this. Psycho, CICCO, something like that. I don't know. And then the last row here is going to be cauliflower. The variety is called Snowball. On the trellis is going to be Blue Lake beans. We have a lot of beans. Both this first trellis and the trellis on the next box over are both these beans. They're something that everybody enjoys in the family. So should be pretty advantageous for us to have quite a bit of that. This next box, we're starting off with two different types of cucumbers. The first one is Sweet and Burpless. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And then the next one over to the right is National Pickling. Two different varieties. One is a little bit larger. The Burpless one, or the one on the left, is going to be a larger variety, and then the smaller one, we're hoping to use that for pickles, hopefully. And then the last three rows is corn. It is a peaches and cream hybrid is what they called it. So really looking forward to that. Love corn, love grilling corn on the grill. Hopefully it'll be a good variety for us to use. Coming down to the next one, this trellis, half of it is going to be a pink eye purple hull pea. It's a bean is my understanding. The other half I'm going to use another variety of peas just to kind of mix it up a little bit. First row here, tomatoes, Roma tomatoes. I know that a lot of people will do seedlings and plant them in, but again, to stick with the consistency, we're just putting everything in seed-wise, and we'll see how it goes. The next row is, they called it a rainbow mix of peppers. So it should have red, yellow, orange, green, and I believe they said chocolate. Bell peppers. Lucky, you're not supposed to be in here. Hey, get out of here, little goofball. So we'll see what those come up with. This next three shorter rows, that should be space for one spaghetti squash plant. I'm growing three where the stakes are just to see what comes up, and if it looks like it's going to be a successful plant, we may transplant them to another area. Spaghetti squash is another family favorite that we really enjoy. And then the last section of the row down here is going to be all sunflower seeds. That is a Mammoth is the variety. The open space here is going to eventually be used for potatoes. Haven't quite exactly decided on what that's going to be quite yet, but that area is being held for that. This next box here, up against the trellis, is going to be a pea. It's an Alaska pea, another variety, and that one is the planting of that was intense. I think it was every 2 inches it could take a plant according to the package. So that should be very, very heavily fruitful harvest out of that one, I'm hoping. These two short rows here are edamame. Again, another family favorite. We all enjoy chomping on those as snacks throughout the day or as part of a meal. The two stakes over here on the left, basically this square here is where we are hoping to harvest our jack-o'-lanterns this Halloween. That's going to be our pumpkin area. According to the information, we should be able to have 2 plants in that space, and we'll see what happens with it. Moving down towards the other end of it there, the first one on the left is honeydew, followed by sugar baby watermelon, and then Sierra Gold cantaloupe. Now, again, according to the plans and all the information, each of these is space for one plant. I've planted 6 or 7 of each in that area or more down here with the honeydew, with the whole goal and hope that if they do start to come up and are a transplantable plant, that we'll be able to move those into different areas and have a larger harvest. So we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, then we still have plenty of season left to transfer that space into a different product. Lastly, this bed here is very, very busy. Starting all the way over on the left is going to be, I'm sorry, the first 2 rows on the left is Bloomsdale long-standing spinach. Spinach is one of those things that almost every salad we have here is primarily spinach. It's something that, again, big family favorite. The third one in is a mix. It's a lettuce mix. It was, I want to say the package had 7 different lettuce varieties mixed into it. So that'll be kind of a box of chocolates, if you will. We don't know what we're going to get out of it, but I'm sure it'll be delicious. Fourth one in is going to be iceberg lettuce, followed by a row of green salad bowl lettuce. I think that's another mix. I don't remember exactly if that was a mix or a specific variety. But the salad bowl mix, I'm sorry. Then 3 rows of carrots. The first one on the left is Danvers, followed by Rainbow, which I'm excited for. It's a variety of a whole bunch of different colors. And then lastly, Imperator, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but another type of carrot. And then lastly, the very last row here on the right is a tall Utah celery. Quite a bit of celery. Like that crunchiness, especially fresh out of the ground in the summer. Left a little bit of space here to have the potential of adding one more item or a couple more items to the list. I do have a whole selection of herbs that I want to grow, but I'm not exactly sure where I want to put those yet. Currently, a couple of plans. 1, put them in that space. 2, build some sort of a structure over here, maybe a cascading box structure to put the herbs, or what I'm kind of leaning towards right now is really just planting them in and around some of the other plants, using them as a companion crop is what the different websites refer to it as. So you were not supposed to be in there, sweetie. So we'll see what we end up doing with that in the long term. So, whoops. Right now, I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to watching this on a daily basis, getting on my hands and knees and weeding just to kind of maintain the space and give it the best chance that it has, given the circumstances that we've worked within and what resources we have available. I do have a couple of concerns though, and we'll see how this pans out. First and foremost is sunlight. These first 4 beds, the main 4 here, get a good amount of supply of sunlight throughout the day. However, that's also before these trees start to bloom. We may have a reduction in sunlight. I'm hoping not too much. But we will see. And then also the bed that's closest to the fence with all the lettuce and everything, that one definitely has the least amount of sun. In all reality, it doesn't really see a good sun coverage until mid to late afternoon. I purposely put partial shade plants in that bed, and we'll see. We really don't know. We'll hope for the best. At the end of the experiment, if it was a decent crop, then we know that we can continue to use that space. If it's not, well, then maybe we'll do something else with that area. Another concern that I've got, and it kind of goes back to my little spike tool that I made, is some of these plants, some of the seed packages said to put the seed, an inch and a half in. Okay, that's fine. That's easy enough to do. But some of these other ones recommend only doing 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. I mean, that's basically putting your finger in the dirt, putting the seed on it, and then just kind of sprinkling it over the top of it with a little bit of soil. I went a little bit deeper than that, and this is exactly why, is because even though the netting is up, these little gobblers will sometimes still find their ways in here, and I didn't want them to necessarily be able to, through their scratching process, disrupt those seeds while they're germinating. So hopefully the depth isn't too much of an issue, but we'll find out. And then lastly, my only other concern at the moment is the time of planting. Some of these, are definitely intended to be planted as seedlings and grown that way and then transplanted. Some of them, aren't supposed to be planted until a little bit later on in the year for this environment in this area. I said phooey to all of that and just went with it. Put everything in the ground all in the same time, the same day. That was 2 days ago, so that would have been the 12th of April. This whole week is it's expected to be up in the 80s. It's supposed to be plenty warm, followed by, right now the forecast has 2 weeks of rain, but that rain is going to be in the 50s and 60s. And so we should be out of the way of the frost, any dangers or concerns about frost, but we don't know. But again, at the end of the day, this is just an experiment. It's a hope. Let's see what happens and go from there. So with that said, going forward, I'll probably do some documented updates every couple weeks, if not at least every month, just to show where we're at and how crops are doing. And we'll go from there. So until next time, Lucky over here says goodbye.